Randy, what recommendations are you currently giving your customers about preparing for future liquidity or exit activities? And how far in advance are you advising your customers or clients to begin to prepare for those events?
Yeah, I mean, and certainly as with any private business owner, I mean, this is going to be the most important financial transaction of his or her life, and so obviously planning ahead and dealing with professionals on all sides is going to be critically important. I'm sure as you guys are, we're seeing an uptick in discussion about getting things done this year ahead of what's certain to be a tax increase. And I'm sure just like you guys, October 31st, my phone's going to really ring off the hook with the calls of, hey, I got to get a deal done this year. And we'll see. And, but as with all of this stuff, I think being prepared is very critical, and doing the things necessary to make your business as most valuable as possible in the community, in the investor community's hands, whether that's strategic or financial. And so getting your house in order, planning, things from a tax perspective, knowing what structure you're going to need to deploy and being ahead of all that. And then from certainly an operational standpoint, having your organizational team properly structured for that type of transition. Certainly if you're going to be selling to a private equity group and you're planning to go home and go to the beach, and there's really you've run the business with an iron fist and there's no number two, that's going to be a tough deal to get done. And so those types of things, as well as operationally, not that all the time you can do things like this, but just from a customer concentration standpoint, if you can smooth those types of things out. I mean, just again, the normal things that you need to do to make your business more valuable. And just with all this, I think planning ahead and getting with the right people and legal, accounting, financial is going to be very important.
I think if you want to know how this year is going to turn out, sometime around July 15th, check with your 5 favorite investment bankers and ask them if they've rented houses between December 15th and the end of the year somewhere in the Caribbean. And if the answer is yes out of 4 out of 5, it's not going to be a good year, but I'm hoping we'll all be glued to our desks the last 2 weeks of December because those phones were ringing, as Randy said. But I hope they don't wait until October to call, because that makes for a really difficult year. But I tend to agree with Randy. I think there's going to be a muted but still a rush for the transactional exits this year, because I think there's a window of opportunity that's beginning to open, and I think that given what people have been sort of living through over the last couple of years, that's going to feel like more than just a ray of sunlight. It's going to feel like a spotlight.
That's it for our prepared questions. Are there any questions from anybody in the audience?
What are the major items out in the political environment that affect the businesses and investors and make them uncomfortable about going forward? Is it healthcare? Is it taxes? What's out there that's going to have a big effect on how investors look at the deals they're going to go into?
Just real quick, globally, I'd say just uncertainty is a huge damper on transaction volume, and that's a critical thing. I mean, look, even if just having something in place is going to be a lot more helpful to the deal world than this global uncertainty, and that's the same with the stock market as well. I'd hit on healthcare though as another just major issue. I 2 transactions in particular that we've been working on. I mean, end of the day, buyer, just the uncertainty around the potential cost that's going to be incurred by our client just is some cause for pause there. And so, again, globally, I'd say uncertainty is probably just the major hindrance, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a bit of a sector-by-sector, company-by-company answer on that. I would say that we got past the worst issue, which was financial Armageddon, which would have been affected everybody. And as much as I didn't want to see the the bailout or the TARP legislation, I think they did the right thing in saving the system. And but for that, I think we'd be in at least twice as bad a shape as we are today, and it's not great right now. So
I I think there's a specific looming threat that everybody in this room and anybody who watches this panel later ought to be concerned about, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever you are. And that is this sort of sense in Congress that maybe we should start to put some sort of political parameters around the Fed. Now, I realize that they've reconfirmed Bernanke, but if you look at some of the discourse around that confirmation, it is as frightening, in my opinion, as anything we've seen out of Washington in, forever. The minute the markets feel that the Fed is anything other than totally independent of political influence, I believe you're going to see, an Armageddon scenario that'll make what we saw 18 months ago look like a walk in the park. And if you ask me what scares me and what scares people that I talk to, it's that kind of nonsense. And what scares me even more is that people in Washington could be stupid enough to even begin that discussion. To even begin that discussion suggests to me that our leadership right now is so out of touch with the realities of how an economy runs that, I've got no sense as to what they're capable of doing. So that's my political commentary for the day, but that stuff really scared me, and still does.
Can you talk about the trends in asset-backed lending versus enterprise cash flow lending? And is it easier to get one form or another today in that type of lending?
Well, last year, asset-backed lending was about all the lending that there was, really. Certainly it went from being a small percentage of the market to a much larger percentage. I see that coming down here in the last 6 months or so, and I see the enterprise or cash flow lending picking up just in terms of the senior loan multiples of EBITDA out there that have gone from 2 to maybe 2.5 to 2 3/4, depending on the company and its health and prospects. So for a while there, that's all they wanted to talk about, but I think it's improved quite a bit. Historically, I think we'll head back to where we were within this year.
Clearly, it's been easier to do an asset-backed deal than a cash flow deal, and I think will be for the foreseeable future. But maybe it's not as difficult. It's not that it's easier. And I think that although if you look at the sort of traditional metrics that asset-backed lenders use, in terms of advances against inventory, advances against receivables, they haven't changed really at all. What has changed is what they're excluding. And they're they're driving a stake through the hearts of businesses basically by excluding assets that they never would have excluded before. But I agree with you. I think that world, particularly because we all, to a degree, sort of work in the same kind of middle market environment, is loosening meaningfully, and I think will continue to.
All right, very good. Well, Jim, we'll make sure we get a copy of this webcast to members of the administration, Congress, and the Senate.
Don't bother, send it to the voters.
But with that, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We appreciate it. Thank you.